I was 34 years old when my stepmom looked me dead in the eyes, across a room full of investors, pointed her finger at me like I was a stray dog that wandered in off the street, and told the security guard out loud in front of everyone, "Remove her. She's not family." And I picked up my coat. And I walked out. No tears. No scene. Just the cold night air and the sound of my own heels on the pavement. But here's the thing nobody in that room saw coming. I owned the building they were all standing in. Every single brick of it. And I had no idea, until the night I finally opened a cedar box my mom left me that I hadn't touched in 14 years. Stay with me. 'Cause what happened next changed everything. Welcome back to Silent Revenge, the channel where the people who never raise their voice end up with the most to say. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found this. Hit that subscribe button right now and smash that like button, because the story I'm about to tell you is the one I've been working up the nerve to share for almost 2 years. Drop your city and the time you're watching this in the comments. I read every single one, and knowing you're out there from all over the world is what keeps me going. Now, let me take you back. My name is Claire Merritt. I'm 34 years old. I run a small real estate law firm out of a second-floor office in downtown Asheville, North Carolina. The sign on the door says Merritt Legal, Property Law, Lease Contracts, Trust Documents. My name. My work. Not one penny borrowed from anyone. 3 hours up the coast in a little harbor town called Saltwick Bay sits the most beautiful hotel you've ever seen in your life. White stone. Warm windows. 4 stories overlooking the water. Kind of place where senators book corner suites and couples plan their weddings 2 years in advance. My mom built it. From absolute nothing. And for 14 years I let myself believe it was gone. Then the invitation came. Heavy cream cardstock. Gold lettering. The Harborview Inn 35th Anniversary Gala. Hosted by Thomas and Sandra Calloway. My dad's name first. His wife's name second. My mom's name nowhere. Not even a footnote. But at the bottom, in my dad's shaky handwriting, the kind that only gets like that when he's nervous, was one line. "We'd love for you to come, Claire Bear. It's been too long, Claire Bear." He hadn't called me that since I was 12. I almost threw it in the trash. Twice. What stopped me wasn't him. It was the address. The Harborview Inn, Saltwick Bay waterfront. That was my mom's place. The one she turned from a leaking, rotting wreck into something that took your breath away. And I hadn't stood inside it since the week of her funeral. I told myself I'd stay an hour. I didn't last 20 minutes. Before I tell you what happened at that gala, you have to understand who Eleanor Merritt was. 'Cause nobody at that party wanted to remember. My mom bought the Harborview Inn in 1989 when it was a 40-room ruin with a dock nobody trusted and a boiler that could have killed somebody on a bad Tuesday. The bank laughed at her. She was a 33-year-old woman with no backing, no family money, and more stubbornness than sense. Her words, not mine. She mortgaged everything twice. She painted rooms herself on weekends. She learned the electrical system by trial and a lot of error. She charmed chefs, won over travel writers, and turned that building into something real. By the time I was old enough to walk the halls, the Harborview had a waiting list for weekend bookings. Every evening at 6, the old buoy bell out past the dock would ring, low and steady like it was checking in. And wherever my mom was, whatever she was doing, she'd stop. Just for a second. She'd close her eyes and listen to it. She had a brass plaque installed by the big lobby window, the one that looked straight out at the water. It was engraved with one line. Built on the water. Kept by the people who mean it. I used to trace the letters with my finger when she was busy at the front desk. She got sick when I was 20. Pancreatic cancer. Kind that doesn't sit across the table and negotiate. She ran the hotel from a chair until she couldn't. Then from a bed until she couldn't do that either. She passed in April. I was a junior in college, home for the funeral, numb in a black dress I'd borrowed from my roommate because nothing I owned seemed right for the worst day of my life. My dad held my hand at the graveside and said, "We'll figure everything out together, Claire Bear." We never talked about the hotel again. Not once. Not ever. I assumed it had passed to him the way things pass, quietly, automatically, the way air fills a room when somebody leaves it. I was wrong. I just wouldn't find out how wrong for another 14 years. Sandra Calloway came into the picture about 2 years after the funeral. She was a hospitality consultant my dad had hired to modernize the brand. She was polished, confident, had a laugh she could switch on like a faucet. Within a year, she was my stepmom. Within 2, she basically ran the place. I watched it happen from a distance. The way you watch a storm roll in across a bay, slow enough that you keep thinking it'll turn. First, it was the foundation. My mom had started a small scholarship fund, the Eleanor Merritt Fund, that sent local kids to culinary school every year. Sandra quietly folded it into something called the Calloway Family Foundation. Same money. New name. Then the lobby plaque disappeared. Went down for renovations and just never came back up. Then the whole brand got a makeover. The Harborview Inn became the Calloway Collection. New logo. New website. A glossy Our Story page where somehow the hotel's founding year lined up perfectly with when my dad remarried. And then there was Destiny, Sandra's daughter from her first marriage. 28 years old, given the title of creative director and an office on the top floor. Destiny had never poured a cup of coffee in that hotel. She redesigned the napkin rings. I said something once. For years before the gala, at a Thanksgiving I absolutely should not have attended. I asked, gently over sweet potato casserole, why my mom's name was gone from the lobby wall. Sandra set down her wine glass and looked at me the way you look at someone tracking mud across a freshly mopped floor. "Eleanor's gone, sweetheart." Her voice was almost kind. Almost. This is the Calloway era now. My dad studied his dinner plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Destiny smirked into her napkin. I drove home that night and didn't go back for 4 years. Until the gold invitation. Until I let myself believe that Claire Bear meant something had changed. And that brings me back to the gala. The Harborview still knocked the wind out of me from the parking lot. Lit up against the dark water, every window warm and golden, exactly like the photograph my mom kept on her nightstand. I sat in my car for a full minute before I could make myself walk in. The first wound was the lobby. Where the brass plaque used to hang by the tall window, there was now a backlit chrome panel. Calloway Collection. Guessed a year that wasn't true. I was standing there, jacket over my arm, still trying to swallow past the tightness in my throat when I heard my name. Miss Merritt. It was Frank. He'd worked the door since before I was born, must have been pushing 70 now, but still stood like a man who took his job seriously. He took my coat exactly the way he used to take my mom's. "Frank." My voice cracked a little. "You're still here. Somebody's gotta remember the place." He glanced around the lobby and leaned in close. "They put her things in 4th floor storage. Plaque 2. I couldn't stop him, but I know right where it is." Before I could even respond. Across the room near the champagne tower, Sandra's head turned. Her eyes found mine through 40 feet of crystal and conversation. And her smile didn't move. Not even a twitch. She set her glass down on a passing tray. And she started walking toward me. 3 men in dark suits started walking too. I want you to know the room was packed. Investors at the bar. A reporter from the Coastal Business Journal working the edges with a recorder. 2 board members by the windows. My dad near the back, laughing too loud at something Destiny had said, looking gray and tired and smaller than I remembered. Sandra reached me first. "What are you doing here?" She said it just quietly enough that I had to lean in, but just loudly enough that the people nearest us could hear. Dad invited me. I kept my voice steady. There's a card with his handwriting. There's been a mistake. She said it like she was correcting a waiter. This is a private event for family and partners. Heads were turning. The reporter drifted closer like a shark that caught something in the water. I am family, I said. And that's when she did it. She lifted one hand, one perfectly manicured hand, and she signaled the security guards. And she said it loud and clear so the whole circle could hear every word. Security, please remove her. She's not family. The room went quiet. I looked for my dad. He was already at my elbow, color rising in his face. But his eyes weren't angry. They were begging. Claire Bear. A whisper meant just for me. Please don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. 14 years of stepping aside. 14 years of silence. And that was the thing he chose to say to me. Not to her. To me. Destiny had appeared next to her mom, phone half raised, the smirk already fully formed. One of the guards touched my arm, gently, embarrassed. He was younger than me. He didn't want to be doing this. I looked at the chrome panel where the plaque used to be. I looked at the window. The dark water beyond it. Then I picked up my coat, nodded at Frank, and walked out without a single word. Cold off the harbor hit me like a slap, and honestly, I was grateful for it. I stood at the edge of the circular drive, just breathing. Past the dock, the buoy bell rang. 6 o'clock. The same low, steady note my mom used to stop everything to hear. It didn't sound like comfort that night. It sounded like something already gone. She is not family. Sandra had said it like a fact. Like reading the temperature off a wall thermometer. And the worst part, the part that sat in my chest like a cold stone, was that for 14 years I had let it become a fact. I had let them take the plaque. Rename the fund. Slide my mom's name off that building one quiet piece at a time. And I had called my silence dignity. It wasn't dignity. It was surrender wearing a nicer coat. I didn't want revenge. I need you to understand that before we go any further, because what came next wasn't rage. Standing in that cold air, watching my breath fog under the parking lot lights, I felt something colder and steadier than anger. I felt awake. There was a box I had never opened. My mom's cedar box. Tight-grained with the color of honey, a small brass latch, her initials burned into the lid. She kept her most important things in it. And when she died, my dad pressed it into my hands at the funeral home and said, "This is yours, Claire Bear. Just yours." I had driven it to 3 different apartments across 2 states. Paid for a storage unit in Asheville for 14 years to keep it in. And never once lifted the lid. That night, instead of driving home, I drove to the storage unit. It was almost 11. The fluorescent light buzzed when I clicked it on. The unit smelled like cold concrete in years. I found the cedar box on a shelf in the back, exactly where I'd put it. I carried it to the front under the bare bulb and set it on an overturned plastic crate. And then I sat down on the floor. And I could not open it. I sat there with that box in my lap for what felt like forever, and then something cracked loose in my chest and I cried. Not the polished, composed kind of crying I'd done at the funeral. The ugly kind. Kind that's been waiting behind a door for 14 years and finally finds it unlocked. I cried for my mom. I cried for the 21-year-old in the borrowed black dress. I cried for every 6 o'clock bell I'd refused to let myself hear. When it passed, I wiped my face on my sleeve and put my thumb on the latch. And I still couldn't do it. But then I remembered something. The last winter before she passed, she'd been strong enough to sit up. I'd pushed her wheelchair to the lobby window, the one that looked straight out at the dock. The water was gray and choppy that day. The bell was quiet. She'd watched the water for a long time before she spoke. "You know what I figured out about this place, Claire Bear?" I was 21 and terrified and pretending I wasn't. "What, Mom?" The water doesn't belong to whoever's loudest. She squeezed my hand, her grip already thinner than I remembered. It belongs to whoever stays. I thought she was talking about the loyal staff. Frank at the door. Marcus in the kitchen who'd been with her for 18 years. I didn't understand what she actually meant. Not until I was sitting on a cold storage floor at 11 o'clock at night with a cedar box in my lap and the whole shape of 14 lost years spread out around me. Whoever stays. She had been talking about me. I put my thumb on the latch, and this time my hand didn't shake. If you've ever had a box you couldn't open, a drawer, a voicemail, a conversation you kept putting off, drop the word box in the comments right now. You know exactly what I mean. And if you're just finding this channel, hit subscribe and smash that like button because we are just getting to the part that changes everything. I braced myself for photographs. A lock of hair. The small, heartbreaking wreckage of a life. That's not what was on top. Tucked inside the lid, held by a thin rubber band gone brittle with age, was a business card. Cream cardstock. Navy lettering. Patricia Holloway. Independent trustee. Coastal Fiduciary Partners. Below it, in my mom's blue ink, 3 words she'd written herself. Call her first. I am a real estate attorney. I read trust documents for a living. I know exactly what an independent trustee means. Means there was a trust. Not a will, not a probate file, which is the legal process your dad would have controlled when she died. A trust, its own separate legal structure with its own independent manager completely separate from him. My mom had built a legal wall around her most important asset and hidden it inside a cedar box for her daughter to find when she was finally ready to look. Card had a phone number. I told myself it was 11 at night, that no trustee picks up at 11, that I'd call in the morning when I was rested and thinking straight. I called anyway. It rang twice. A woman's voice answered. Awake. Unsurprised. As if the phone had always been about to ring. This is Patricia Holloway. My name is Claire Merritt. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I think you knew my mom. A pause. Then something I will never ever forget. Miss Merritt, she said quietly. I've been waiting a very long time for this call. We met the next morning. Tricia's office smelled like old paper and good coffee. She was 60-something, silver-haired, precise, the kind of woman who's delivered hard news before and learned to do it with grace. On the table between us sat one closed folder. Eleanor Merritt Family Trust. Your mom engaged my firm in 2009, Patricia said. 2 years before she passed. She was very organized about it. People who build something from nothing usually are. Why did you wait? I asked. Why not contact me years ago? Patricia opened the folder but kept her hand flat on the first page, not yet turning it. Because the trust has a condition. Your mom told me not to approach you. She wanted you to come to me on your own. She looked at me steadily. And there was a timing requirement, Claire. You just turned 34. The condition is met? As of last month. She paused. Your mom believed that if I found you too early, the family would make it all about money. She wanted you to arrive on your own terms when you were ready to look. She used a phrase. Patricia unfolded her hands. She said she didn't want to hand her daughter a weapon. She wanted to hand her a choice. I sat very still. 14 years of believing the hotel had simply passed to my dad. 14 years of watching them strip my mom's name off a wall and telling myself there was nothing left to defend. Patricia, I said carefully. What exactly is in that folder? She turned the first page. Almost everything you think your father owns, she said. She laid it out slowly, the way good trustees do. Watching my face the whole time. Trust owned a holding company. Quiet, single purpose, the kind nobody notices. And that holding company owned one piece of real estate. Which property? I asked, even though my stomach already knew. The land, Patricia said. The waterfront parcel. And the building on it. She turned the page. The Harborview Inn. I'd spent 10 years building structures exactly like this one for my own clients. Here's how it works. You separate the bricks from the business. You put the real estate in one company, the hotel operation in another, and you let the business rent the building from the property owner. My mom had built the property side. My dad's company was just the tenant. The Callaway Collection doesn't own the hotel, I said slowly. It rents it. It leases it, Patricia corrected gently. From a trust your father has been a limited co-trustee of since your mom died. He has never owned the building, Claire. Cannot sell it. He cannot change the trust. He cannot remove my firm as the independent manager. She let that sit. Your mom built a fence around him so high he apparently forgot it was a fence. I looked down at the folder. And the successor trustee, I said. Who did she name? Patricia smiled. Just slightly. You. Sole successor trustee. Full control vesting on your 34th birthday. She folded her hands on the table. The land, the building, and the trust reserve, $12 million set aside for exactly this moment. As of last month, Claire, it's yours to claim whenever you're ready. For 14 years, Sandra Callaway had been peeling my mom's name off a building my mom still owned. Destiny had redesigned the napkin rings in a hotel her family merely rented. My dad had let a guard put his hand on the rightful owner's arm and asked her not to make a scene. They had been rebranding a house that was never theirs, and I had the legal power to take it back. There's one more thing, Patricia said. She slid a sealed envelope across the table. My name on the front in blue ink. My mom's handwriting. I recognized the slant of the C before I even touched it. I opened it right there. Tricia studied the window. My mom's letter wasn't long. She was never long. Claire Bear, if you're reading this, you found the box and you found Patricia and you finally let yourself look. I know how long that took. I know you, sweetheart, better than you think. I didn't build all of this so you'd be rich. I built it so no one could ever make you small. A house in your name is a house no one can throw you out of. Your dad is a good man and a weak one. After I'm gone, he will want peace more than he wants what's right. And someone will offer him peace at your expense. Don't hate him for it. Just don't pay for it. And then the last line. The one I've thought about every single day since. Don't fight them, sweetheart. Just stop renting them your silence. I read it 3 times. I folded it once, along the crease she'd made, and I pressed it against my chest. The water doesn't belong to whoever's loudest. Belongs to whoever stays. She hadn't been talking about the staff. She'd been talking about me. I need to stop here for a second because I know some of you are going absolutely crazy right now. Drop your city and the time you're watching this in the comments. Right now. I want to know exactly where in the world you are when this part lands. And if this video is giving you chills, hit that like button. Costs you nothing and it means everything to this channel. Subscribe if you haven't. The next part is where it gets wild. I spent a week doing what I do best. Reading. I read the lease the way I'd read it for any client paying me $400 an hour, line by line looking for the trapdoor. On the 4th night, buried in the dense back pages where people stop paying attention, I found it. Clause. My mom, careful even about the things she loved most, had written protection for her own name directly into the rental agreement. The operating company had agreed in writing to keep the Harborview name, the founder's plaque, and the Eleanor Merritt Fund as permanent features of the property. Any rebrand required the property owner's written approval. Property owner being the trust. Trust being now me. Sandra hadn't asked the trust for approval. Course she hadn't. She didn't know the trust existed. Callaway Collection rebrand, a violation. Folding the Eleanor Merritt Fund into the Callaway Family Foundation, a violation. taking the plaque off the lobby wall and dumping it in fourth-floor storage, literally written into a contract my mom put together on her deathbed. A violation. "This is the Callaway era now," Sandra had told me 4 years ago over Thanksgiving wine. Turns out my mom had reached forward in time and written the exact clause that made the Callaway era illegal. I sat with that for a long time. Not gloating. Just quietly, completely amazed at the woman who raised me. But then Patricia called with something that changed the timeline entirely. "There's something you need to know," she said. "Trust receives financial statements from the operating company under the lease terms. I just got the latest batch." A pause. "The Callaway collection is in the middle of refinancing a large commercial loan. They're using it to fund a second property up the coast. The loan closes in about 3 weeks." "Okay," I said carefully. "The collateral on the loan," Patricia said, "is the Harborview Inn, the land and the building. The borrower's own attorneys have been telling the bank that the company owns the real estate. Collateral means the thing you put up as a guarantee. If you can't pay back the loan, the bank takes it. They were promising a bank $35 million of my mom's property as that guarantee." The room went very quiet. "They're pledging my mom's property to a bank," I said. "As if it's theirs." "The charitable reading," Patricia said, "is that they genuinely don't know about the trust." She let that sit. "And the uncharitable one? Is that someone in that company knows exactly what they're doing and is betting you never open the box. 3 weeks. That was the window. If that loan closed against my mom's land as collateral built on a lie, untangling it would take years of courtrooms and legal fees, and the damage would already be done. But if I stepped into the trusteeship before the loan closed, cleanly on the public record, truth would simply be the truth. No courtroom required. I had 3 weeks to stop being quiet. And that's when the envelope arrived. I was 2 days from signing the papers when a courier knocked on my office door with a thick package. The return address was a law firm I knew by reputation, the kind that sends letters first and files lawsuits second. Inside was a 3-page cease and desist letter. "Stop all inquiries. Stop contacting fiduciary partners. Stay away from the property." And attached to it, a document titled First Amendment to the Eleanor Merritt Family Trust. Someone had changed the trust, removed me as successor, named my dad as sole trustee with full powers, including the power to sell. It was dated 9 years ago. Bore my dad's signature. I felt the floor tilt for exactly 1 breath. Then I picked up a red pen, and I started reading. Derek Marsh, General Counsel, the Callaway Collection, had made the mistake confident people always make. He assumed I'd be too shocked to read carefully. He sent a fake legal document to a forensic real estate lawyer. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down, and read the amendment the way I read everything. Took me about 2 minutes to find 3 problems. Problem 1, my mom's trust became permanent. Lawyers call it irrevocable the day she died. Permanent means exactly what it sounds like. You cannot change it. The amendment was dated 9 years ago. My mom had been gone 5 years by then. You cannot change a permanent trust on behalf of someone already in the ground. Problem 2, even if the amendment had somehow been valid, it required written approval from the independent trustee, Patricia's firm. Coastal Fiduciary Partners had never been contacted. There was no signature from them anywhere on the document. Problem 3, the amendment referred to the Eleanor Merritt Foundation. My mom never used that word. It was the fund. The Eleanor Merritt Fund. Whoever drafted this had copied the name off Sandra's rebranding materials, and never once checked the original. A forger who doesn't know the dead woman's own words is a forger who wasn't there. Here's the thing nobody told Derek Marsh. I read trust documents for a living. He sent a fake to the one person on Earth most likely to take it apart in under 2 minutes. And he did it because this family decided who I was 14 years ago and never once updated the file. If you've ever been completely underestimated by people who stopped paying attention to you, you know exactly how that feels. And you know it's not an insult. It's a gift. Drop underestimated in the comments if that hits home. And share this video with someone in your life who needs to hear that silence has a price, and so does breaking it. We're almost at the part you've been waiting for. Before I signed anything, I needed to do one thing that wouldn't show up in any legal file. I needed to go back to the hotel. Not in daylight. Not through the front door. I needed to stand in that lobby when it was quiet and decide for certain what kind of person I was going to be when this was over. Called Frank. He met me at the service entrance at 11:30 that same night, let me in without a word, and walked me to the freight elevator, the old one my mom used to ride when the boilers acted up. 4th floor. Back corner. The storage room smelled like dust and paint thinner. Folded banquet tables. A chandelier wrapped in plastic. 3 bins of Callaway Collection branded signs. And there, behind all of it, leaning face down against the wall like something buried in shame, my mom's plaque. I turned it over. The brass had gone dark with neglect, dull where it used to catch the light. But every letter was still there, exactly as I'd traced them with my finger when I was little. Built on the water. Kept by the people who mean it. Out the storage window, across the black harbor, the buoy bell rang. 11:30. Not 6. But the same low note my mom used to stop the whole world to hear. It reached me 4 stories up, faint through the glass. And it didn't sound like grief anymore. It sounded like a question. Are you staying this time? I stood there over that tarnished plaque and I found my answer. And it surprised me with how gentle it was. I wasn't going to burn anything down. I wasn't going to bury them in court. I wasn't going to march into that lobby with a camera crew and make the scene they've been terrified of since the night they threw me out. I was going to put this plaque back on that wall by the window. And I was going to do it as the person who legally owned the wall. I called Patricia from the freight elevator on the way back down. I'm ready to sign, I said. My dad called before the ink dried. We met at a diner halfway between Saltwick Bay and Asheville, a neutral booth, weak coffee, the kind of place where hard conversations go to happen quietly. He looked older than at the gala. Smaller. He kept folding and unfolding a paper napkin, and for a moment I let myself remember being 7 years old, sitting in a booth just like this one, holding his hand after a little league game. Something in me ached. Your mom set something up, he said finally, not meeting my eyes. Before she passed. Didn't she? You knew there was a trust, I said. I knew there was something. He still wouldn't look at me. Sandra's people handled it. They told me everything was taken care of. They told you to sign an amendment 11 years ago, I said quietly. His hands went still. In that stillness, I watched something cross his face, real grief, the kind he'd been sitting on for over a decade. I miss her, he said. His voice broke on it. Your mom. Every single day. I'm not the man she thought I was, Claire Bear. I never was. And for one real second, one honest, heartbreaking second, I almost reached across the table. Then he leaned in and lowered his voice. Whatever she set up, whatever you found, please don't blow up the family. Sandra did her best for all of us. Just don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. Even with his eyes still wet. Even now. The first instinct was still to protect the peace that had cost me everything. I understood him completely in that moment. And I stopped hoping. I'm not going to make a scene, Dad, I said. And I meant it more literally than he could possibly know. I'm just going to tell the truth on paper. I laid the signature pages out on my kitchen table that Tuesday night. The acceptance of trusteeship. The notice to my dad. The ownership certification. The lease with the violation clauses flagged. Derek Marsh's fake amendment, which I didn't plan to use in court but kept because it told me everything I needed to know about how little they expected from me. And my mom's letter open on the table next to the cedar box. Don't fight them, sweetheart. Just stop renting them your silence. I uncapped my pen. I thought about the bell and the window and the woman who built a trap so gently nobody felt it close. I signed. Patricia served the notice on my dad that morning, formally ending his interim role. She sent the ownership certification to the lender's attorneys, the bank still finishing its review on that $35 million loan, putting them on clear written notice of who actually owned the collateral. And as property owner, I issued a formal notice of default under the lease, citing every violation: the rebrand, the fund, plaque and fourth-floor storage. Sent to the lender. Sent to the board. Sent to every member who'd stood at that window watching Sandra have me removed. I didn't end the lease that morning. I didn't need to. The default notice arriving at the lender's office mid-financing did the work all by itself. I set the pen down, washed my coffee mug, and put my phone face down on the kitchen counter. It started buzzing at 11:47 a.m. I let it. I went for a walk, bought groceries, made dinner, came home. When I finally turned the phone over, the screen told me what 14 years of silence had cost them in a single afternoon. 74 missed calls. Sandra, my dad, Destiny, Derek Marsh. The same names cycling over and over in a panic I could feel through the glass. I didn't call a single one of them back. I had said everything I needed to say in writing to the right people. There's a particular kind of power in not picking up. For 14 years, the silence in this family had run one direction. They didn't call. I didn't exist. My mom's name came off that wall and not one phone rang to ask me how I felt about it. Now the silence ran the other way. And it was mine. I listened to every single one of them that evening, sitting at the kitchen table with the signed documents still spread out in front of me. I wanted to understand exactly who these people were when the building stopped belonging to them. Derek Marsh, professional and cold. Miss Merritt, your actions are reckless and are exposing the company to serious harm. Contact my office immediately. He still called it the company. He still thought he had standing. Destiny, almost funny. This is absolutely insane. You can't just take a hotel. I'm the creative director. As if a title her mom handed her meant anything against a deed. My dad, 3 messages, each more frightened than the last. Claire Bear, the bank is calling. They're saying the loan can't close. What did you do? Please call me. And Sandra. I saved hers for last. Her first message: honey, sweetheart, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Let's sit down like family. Family. The word she'd handed to a security guard. Her third message was not honey. You ungrateful little nothing. After everything we built, you think a piece of paper makes this yours? We will bury you in court. Do you hear me? We will bury you. I listened to the threat twice. Calmly. The way you'd check the weather forecast for a town you no longer live in. She told a guard I wasn't family. She was finally right about something. Family doesn't hold the deed. The owner does. I deleted all 74 voicemails and went to bed. The knock came at 12:10 a.m. Then the buzzer, held down hard, insistent. I looked through the peephole and saw all 3 of them crammed into my apartment hallway. Sandra in a coat thrown over whatever she'd been wearing. My dad, gray and shaking. Destiny with her phone already half raised, filming before I'd even opened the door. I considered not answering. But I'd spent 14 years not answering doors. Look where that got me. I opened it. You don't get to do this, Sandra said, pushing forward before the door was fully open. You don't get to crawl back after all these years and steal what we built. I didn't steal anything. My voice came out quiet. Calm. Surprised even me. Come in. You're letting the cold in. That threw her. She'd come ready for a fight and I'd offered her a chair. They filed into my small kitchen. The signed documents were still on the table. Sandra's eyes went to them and snapped away fast like they burned. "The bank pulled the loan," my dad said. His hands wouldn't stay still. 35 million. They're saying we don't own the building. Claire, I've run that hotel for 14 years. You've run it, I said. You never owned it. Mom did. Now I do. This is fraud, Sandra snapped. We'll have lawyers. You already sent one. I slid Derek Marsh's fake amendment across the table toward her. He sent me this. A trust change dated 5 years after Mom died. No independent trustee's signature. Her fund called a foundation, a name she never once used. I looked at Sandra. Level. Quiet. It's not even a good fake, Sandra. It's just a confession with a signature line. Kitchen went very still. Destiny lowered her phone. My dad stared at the document and I watched him understand, finally completely, what he'd signed in some conference room 11 years ago while Sandra's people told him everything was fine. I didn't know, he whispered. Sandra, I didn't. Shut up, Thomas. And that, more than any legal document, told the whole room everything about who had actually built the Callaway era. It had never been my dad. He'd just rented them his silence, same as me. The difference was I'd stopped. Sandra recovered fast. People like her always do. Fine. She straightened up, pulling the old confidence back around her like a coat. You own the bricks. Congratulations. But the business is ours, the brand, the staff, the bookings. Callaway Collection is worth nothing without the company that runs it. You'll lease it back to us, and you'll be reasonable because an empty hotel earns you exactly nothing. It was honestly a smart play. She'd found the one piece of leverage she had left. She just didn't know I'd already used the lease against her. There's no lease to negotiate, I said. There's a lease in default. You violated it the day you took my mom's name off that building without the owner's approval. That notice went to the lender this morning. The board has a copy. So does the reporter from the Coastal Business Journal who was at that gala. I watched it land. The investors from the gala had been on the phone with my dad all day. They'd put money into the Callaway Collection because Sandra had told them a story about a family business they owned outright. I had just sent them the documents. I stood up. Not fast. Not angry. I just stood because some things you say on your feet. You told a guard to remove me, I said. You said I wasn't family. In front of investors and a reporter and 2 board members. I looked at her. You were right. I'm not family. I'm the landlord. The word filled the kitchen like cold air off the harbor. You can keep your name. Run whatever company you can run somewhere else. But you will not keep my mom's. Her name goes back on that wall. The fund goes back to her. And the Callaway era ends with the signature I already put on a document before lunchtime, quietly the way she taught me. I held the door open. They left. Sandra first. Destiny behind her. My dad lingered in the doorway, searching for something to say. He found nothing worth keeping. The fallout was quieter than you'd expect. And far more complete. The loan never closed. The lender, once it had the ownership documents, would not wire $35 million against property the borrower didn't own. The expansion died on the table. Without it, and with a default notice hanging over their lease, the Callaway Collection had no future running my mom's hotel. I gave them a choice because my mom's letter asked me to be generous. They could negotiate a fair lease, with her name and fund and plaque fully restored under terms I controlled. Or they could walk away. Sandra couldn't stomach being a tenant in the building she'd tried to own. She walked. So did Destiny and her napkin rings. Derek Marsh resigned within the month. The fake amendment became a very quiet problem he'd be explaining to a licensing board for some time. My dad stayed on small honorary because he was still my dad and because my mom had told me not to hate him. I don't. 2 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of the Harborview Inn by the tall window that looks straight out at the dock. Chrome panel was gone. In its place hung my mom's plaque, the brass cleaned and recast, every letter catching the afternoon light like it had been waiting to. Built on the water. Kept by the people who mean it. I'd had it remounted exactly where she put it. A few inches lower than before, low enough that a kid could reach up and trace the letters. Frank stood beside me, hands folded the way he used to stand beside her. "She'd have liked that," he said. "You doing it without shouting." "She wrote it that way," I said. Past the dock in the late afternoon, the buoy bell rang. This time it didn't sound like a death toll. Didn't sound like a roll call. Sounded like a homecoming. I didn't burn their lives down. I want you to know that because I think it actually matters. I could have. The fake amendment alone could have ended careers and fed years of court battles. The lender would have happily helped me chase damages. There was a version of this story where I left Sandra Calloway with nothing. I chose a different one. They kept their personal money, their house, their cars. I didn't touch a single dollar that was actually theirs. What I took back was only ever my mom's. The land. The building. $12 million reserve she set aside. And her name on a wall. The Harborview Inn runs under the trust now. The Eleanor Merritt Fund sends local kids to culinary school again, fully funded from the reserve she built for exactly this kind of future. The first scholarship student starts this fall. I kept my own firm in Asheville, but I drive out most weekends. I sit in the lobby by the window and I work. And at 6, the bell rings out on the harbor and I stop whatever I'm doing to listen. The way she taught me. My dad and I talk now, carefully, more than I once thought possible. He visits the hotel sometimes and stands a long time in front of the plaque. I let him. Grief is allowed even when it's 14 years late. Sandra I haven't heard from. I don't expect to. People who build their lives on someone else's silence tend to go very quiet when it ends. The cedar box sits on my desk now. Latch open. My mom's letter inside, that one line facing up where I can read it every single morning before I sign anything. Don't fight them, sweetheart. Just stop renting them your silence. People ask me if I forgave them. That's the wrong question. Took me 14 years and one cedar box to figure out the right one. The boundary I hold now isn't built on forgiveness or on bitterness. It's built on a deed and a name and a wall. On knowing exactly what belongs to me and refusing, ever again, to pretend it doesn't. Because here's the only thing I really learned from all of it. What's built on someone else's silence only stands until the day that person decides to stop being silent. That was my story. One signature. One name back on a wall. If a family ever made you feel like a guest in your own history, go open the box. You might own more than they ever let you believe. A lot of people have been asking me what I would tell my younger self. The 21-year-old in the borrowed black dress. And honestly, I used to think the answer was open the box sooner. Get to the truth faster. Don't waste 14 years. But I'm not sure that's right anymore. 'Cause here's the thing about timing. My mom built that timing into the trust on purpose. She set a condition on my 34th birthday, not my 21st, not my 25th. 34. She wanted me to have over a decade of building my own life first. She wanted me to walk into that office not as a grieving kid desperate for what she'd left behind, but as a woman who had already figured out who she was without it. If I'd opened that box at 25, I might have made it about the money. I might have let the anger drive it into a courtroom and spent the next 10 years fighting. I might have burned the whole thing down and regretted it. My mom didn't want me to inherit a lawsuit. She wanted me to inherit a home. And she wanted me to be ready to take care of it. So if there's something I'd tell the younger version of me, the one driving away from every Thanksgiving feeling like she'd lost something she couldn't name, It's not hurry up. It's this. The box will still be there when you're ready. Your mom packed it carefully. She knew what she was doing. She knew you. Trust that she built the runway long enough for you to land. That's the thing about people who build something from nothing. They don't just build for now. They build for the version of you that's still becoming. My mom built a hotel out of a ruin on a dock that nobody trusted. She mortgaged everything twice, painted rooms herself, learned boilers by hand, and created something that outlasted her by decades. And then, quietly, carefully, she built one more thing. A way home. For me. I just had to be willing to walk through the door. The water doesn't belong to whoever's loudest. Belongs to whoever stays. I'm staying now, Mom. I finally understand what you meant. Drop your city and the time you're watching this right now in the comments. I want to know where in the world this landed for you. If this story hit something real, something you've been carrying, share it with someone who needs to hear it. One share from you could reach the person who's been sitting on their own cedar box for years without knowing it. And if you watch this whole thing and you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. 'Cause the people who never make a scene, they're the ones who end up owning the building. I'll see you in the next one. Right here on Silent Revenge.